The restaurant lights shimmered softly that afternoon, bouncing off polished glasses and marble floors, but inside her chest, Maya felt nothing but dread. She knew she shouldn't have agreed to this. Something in her gut had whispered that this blind date wasn't for her, it was for their amusement. Her co-workers had been giggling too much, whispering behind her back, asking if she had something nice to wear. And now, here she was, sitting at a table dressed in her simple pastel dress, with hair tied neatly, clutching the strap of her handbag like a lifeline, while at the next booth, she could feel the stares, the hidden laughter. They had set her up as a joke. She wasn't glamorous like the other women in the office. She didn't have expensive makeup, designer clothes, or sparkling charm. Maya was just a quiet, hard-working woman in her late 20s, living paycheck to paycheck, carrying the invisible scars of too many cruel words. She had grown up learning to swallow humiliation, to walk away quietly instead of fighting back. And today, she knew she had been pushed into a trap once again. The blind date was nothing but their cruel entertainment. Before I continue, if you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the strength of people who rise despite being laughed at, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to this channel Fearless Grace. Your support helps stories like this reach more hearts and inspire hope. Maya sat still, her palms sweaty, waiting for this imaginary man to arrive, probably another cruel part of the plan. Maybe no one would even come. Maybe they'd just leave her waiting until she finally walked away humiliated. But then, the doors of the restaurant opened, and a man stepped inside. He wasn't what she expected. Not at all. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a crisp navy suit, he looked like someone who didn't belong to this ordinary lunch crowd. His face was handsome but carried something deeper, tired eyes, the kind that had seen too much, but also the kind that held sincerity. His hair was dark, combed neatly, but with a stubborn lock falling to his forehead as if to remind the world he wasn't perfect. The entire restaurant seemed to pause, just for a moment, as he walked in. And then, unbelievably, his gaze fell directly on Maya. Her heart skipped. He was real. He was walking toward her table. And when he sat down, she couldn't believe it. This wasn't a cruel joke anymore. This was something else. His name was Adrian Cross. Maya didn't know it yet, but he was one of the most powerful CEOs in the city. Widely known but intensely private, Adrian had built a massive empire while raising his little girl alone after tragedy had taken his wife years ago. But none of that mattered to Maya at that moment. What mattered was how he looked at her. He didn't skin her like she was an object to judge. He didn't smirk. He simply sat, offered a faint smile, and said quietly, "I'm glad I'm not late." Maya froze, unable to speak. In the corner of her eye, she could see her co-workers watching, stifling their laughter, nudging each other as if waiting for her embarrassment to bloom. She wanted to shrink, to vanish. But Adrian was calm, steady, as if none of that mattered. The first 20 minutes were painful for her. Maya barely spoke, afraid of sounding foolish, afraid he'd notice the people laughing nearby, afraid that at any second he'd realize she wasn't worthy of his presence and walk out. But Adrian, he didn't mock her hesitation. Instead, he asked gentle questions, about her favorite books, about the place she grew up, about what she liked to do when she wasn't working. Each time she answered softly, his eyes lit up, as if her words had value. As if she mattered. And little by little, Maya's shoulders loosened. For the first time in years, someone wasn't making her feel invisible. But in the background, her co-workers were restless. They hadn't expected this. They thought Adrian would walk out, laugh, or leave her humiliated. They leaned closer, waiting for her to trip over her words, for the cruel punchline to land. Yet what happened next silenced them. The waitress brought over a small plate for Adrian, something off menu, clearly prepared for someone important. The whispers confirmed it. He wasn't just any man. He was the Adrian Cross, the elusive billionaire CEO. Gasps circled the restaurant as recognition spread. And suddenly, the tone shifted. The very people who had set Maya up began to shrink, realizing the man across from her wasn't going to laugh at her. Instead, Adrian leaned forward, his voice low, his expression serious. "Maya, do you know what I see when I look at you?" Her breath caught. She shook her head. "I see someone who doesn't know her own worth yet. Someone who has been hurt, but hasn't given up. That's rare." His words were so gentle, yet so piercing, she nearly cried right there. She couldn't understand why he was saying them, why someone like him was even sitting with someone like her. But before she could respond, her co-workers' laughter grew louder, mocking, desperate, trying to salvage their cruel game. Adrian turned his head, his jaw tightening, and for the first time, Maya saw the steel beneath his calm. He stood up. The entire restaurant seemed to still again. Maya's heart pounded as Adrian looked at her co-workers directly, his voice steady but sharp. Do you think it's funny to humiliate someone? To set them up for your entertainment? His words cut through the air like glass. The laughter died instantly. Faces turned pale. No one dared reply. Then, to Maya's absolute shock, Adrian turned back to her. He took her hand in his, firm and certain, and his next words silenced not just the co-workers but everyone in the room. Maya, he said, his voice carrying through the restaurant, I don't want this to be just a blind date. I want it to be the start of something real. Will you give me that chance? Will you let me stand beside you, not just today, but every day? Will you marry me? The restaurant erupted in gasps. Maya's knees nearly gave out. This couldn't be real. Marriage. From a man she had just met. But in Adrian's eyes, she saw something raw and unshakable. It wasn't a game. It wasn't pity. It was recognition. He had seen her, truly seen her, and in that moment he chose her without hesitation. Tears blurred her vision. She whispered yes, not because she felt worthy, but because for the first time in her life, someone made her believe she could be. The co-workers slipped out of the restaurant in shame, their cruel game backfiring in a way they could never have imagined. Maya didn't look at them. She couldn't. All she could see was Adrian holding her hand, steadying her, giving her something she thought she'd never have, dignity, respect, and a future she never dared to dream of. In the days and weeks that followed, the story of that blind date spread like wildfire. People called it unbelievable, too sudden, like a fairy tale. But behind the headlines, the truth was simpler. Two broken souls had found each other. Adrian, the lonely single father who carried the weight of an empire and the ache of loss. Maya, the quiet woman who had been invisible for too long, finally chosen in front of the very people who laughed at her. Together, they built something steady, something strong, a life where Adrian's little girl found in Maya the mother she had been missing, and Maya found in Adrian a love she never thought existed. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that kindness and courage can change lives in an instant, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to Fearless Grace. Every gesture of support helps us bring more emotional, life-changing stories to you. And before we end, here's a special request. Comment below with the words, kindness wins, if you believe that no cruelty, no laughter, and no humiliation can ever defeat the power of genuine love. Because sometimes, what begins as a cruel joke ends up becoming the most beautiful truth of all.